All right, everybody. Thanks so much for stopping by another live episode of Real Estate Titans, sponsored by Lion Bolt Media. I'm your host, Greg Fowler, traveling throughout the marketplace, interviewing the top real estate professionals in our field, essentially gathering insight, inspiration. It really drives and motivates these top producers above and beyond everybody else in what I'd like to consider a real estate titan. Now, our very special guest and feature titan for episode 266, all the way from St. Louis, none other than Russ Nolting. Now, Russ, it's an absolute honor and pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Happy to be here. Thank you for the invite.
This is great. I can't wait to dive into the series of questions. Really, everybody out there in the Titan world, Titan Nation, to get to know you better, Russ. What makes you tick? All your learning experiences and expertise over all these years in the business, dominating. So without further ado, let's dive in. Let's talk about Russ for a second here. Who is Russ? What got you into the business? What's your journey and your path progression all the way up until today? What's the origin story, Russ? Let's go there.
Awesome. Well, so I actually got out of college, went right into teaching. I taught for 4 years, high school physics.
Wow.
And I woke up one morning, my last year of teaching, and I was raring to go. Got to work early, started working on my lessons for the day, super excited. And students started filing in the classroom. And I noticed the guy across the hall, Tom. Man, Tom wasn't there. In fact, Tom was 5 minutes late to work that day. And what struck me was that Tom was always 5 minutes late to work. And Tom was going to receive the same raise that year that I was going to receive. And at that point, I realized I couldn't stay in the education field any longer because the effort that I was putting in was not being rewarded. And frankly, the effort Tom was not putting in was being rewarded. So I didn't sign my contract that year. And that was during, like, I don't know, the tech boom was starting. This was 1998.
Wow.
And that's probably not accurate, but the tech boom was well underway. Sure. I started looking for sales jobs in technology, and my father called me one day and he said, "Please come sell dirt with me." And he had been developing land in the outskirts of St. Louis, Missouri for the previous 20 years.
Wow.
And he was super successful. But his business was muddy and messy, and he would buy 1,000 acres and divide it into 100 tracts and sell it. And it just sounded so unsophisticated and boring. And I said, no way am I going to do that. So he begged me to work for him for the summer.
Wow.
And so I worked for him for the summer, and I was in a big John Deere cab tractor in like late August, air conditioning blowing. I was smoking a Macanudo cigar, and man, I'm driving around this tractor mowing bush hogging like a, I don't know, 100-acre field. And I was thinking about like how awesome my life was, that I got to do this all the time. It was great. I loved it. I loved everything about it, fell in love with real estate, and I've been doing it ever since.
Oh my gosh. And Russ, you paint such a beautiful picture with that, even from the cigar to the August heat. I really love that backstory. And, talking about physics to dirt and real estate and having that path, there is not a one size fits all. It's never one of those things that you think, hey, when I grow up someday, I'm going to do it. It's always interesting and fascinating to go into it. So from that aspect, falling in love, what did your career path look like from there to today, Russ? Because you've been doing this at a high level for a long time. And I would love to kind of get the lineage of how you got to where you're at today from that point.
Absolutely. So I went all in on real estate with Dad. He kind of focused on the development side of our business. And I took over the sales side, ran the sales team. During those years, we were selling more residential real estate lots than anybody in the state of Missouri. And it was great.
Yeah.
until about 2006 and a half. In mid 2006, the phone just stopped ringing, and like you could almost hear the silence.
Unreal.
And the spigot totally turned off. And I went about 18 months without a sale. And residential land is not a necessity. Like nobody has to have 10 acres of weeds.
Right.
So that's the first thing that goes usually in a down market. And it went in a very noticeable way.
Unreal.
So in late 2007, I quit.
Okay.
And I said I couldn't survive this anymore. And I went into residential real estate because at the time, my choices were either go back to teaching and back to that environment that didn't work for me, or use my real estate license in another way. So I opened a shop in September of 2007.
Wow.
And, I'm sure everyone listening here is thinking that's like the worst time ever in the history of real estate to open a real estate company. But I did. And I had a couple really great things happen. A good friend of mine said, you need to get a coach. And so I hired a coach immediately.
Wow.
And in a downturn, in a tough market, brand new in the residential side, I sold like 36 houses during a recession, which I was happy about. I mean, we survived the year. I had we were pregnant with my son. We had 3 daughters at the time, and we made it. In 2010, I had built up a small brokerage with like 8 agents.
Okay.
And it was one of those brokerages where I was doing the vast majority of all the sales, and I was taking my commissions to pay everyone else's bills. And it was a very like typical independent brokerage setup where the math just really wasn't working.
Sure.
And I read Gary Keller's Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, which is all about how to set up a team the right way. And I was setting up this indie team the wrong way.
Oh, no.
And Keller had recently launched in St. Louis, and a couple of my good realtor friends had just moved over there. And I literally grabbed our licenses one day, walked into the local Keller office and said, will you take me?
Wow.
And
just like that.
It was like the easiest recruiting appointment in real estate ever. And, what was interesting about it is I was trying to do a great job as a broker. I was trying to give awesome training, but it just wasn't working. I had too many hats I was wearing, and I was just failing too often.
Wow.
So I joined KW in February of 10.
Okay.
And immediately dismantled my team. Everyone ended up leaving the business, basically.
Wow.
Which indicates kind of like the quality of the agents I was hiring, right? Like,
fair enough. Yeah.
It wasn't that great. So I started rebuilding, and about 2 years into it, the people that owned the office, that were running the office, left. And I won't get into the details, but it was an ugly situation.
Ouch.
And so one of the investors in that office said to me, hey, will you run this office for the next few months while we look for a suitable team leader to run it? And I said, sure, I'm a team player. So I did that for the next 10 years.
A true team player right there.
A true team player. I sold during those 10 years in a leveraged way, having anywhere from a dozen sales to I think my best year while I was a team leader was 50 or 60 units.
Wow.
I became a coach with KW's MAPS coaching division in 2016.
Love it.
And then I was out in Colorado in 2021. My oldest daughter, Sarah, had just gotten married. She moved to Fort Collins. We were visiting her, and we were up in the mountains.
Wow.
And we were coming out of the mountains at the end of a week of just loving everything about summers in Colorado. And I looked at my wife, Heather, who we've been married for 26 years.
Wow,
and I
congrats.
said, we need to move here. And that was summer of 21. And we drove home.
Yeah.
And I walked into my office the next Monday. And for like the first time since that experience back at the high school where I was teaching physics, I walked into my office and I was like, I don't want to be here.
Wow.
And so, and I loved my office. We grew that office from 150 agents to now it's got 700 agents.
Real.
But I just didn't want to be there anymore. So after a little bit of soul searching, I resigned with the intention of ramping my sales, doing more coaching. But about 3 hours after my resignation went out, I got a call from Keller International. And, when you're a Keller Williams person in leadership, if you get a 512 area code, you pick up the phone. So I picked up the phone from Austin, and the guy on the other line asked me if I was interested in a leadership role in Colorado, which serendipitously I had just been talking about, wanting to be there. And 6 weeks later, I was hired as the regional director for KW Colorado, and have been doing that ever since. So
unreal.
So my real estate roles today, I continue to coach for KW. I'm the regional director in Colorado, where we have 23 market centers and about 60 locations. And I'm the operating partner in KW Chesterfield.
Okay.
And then, and I still sell.
Unreal. I mean, Russ, but you're talking about so many different adjustments into a life, and, putting in that effort and work and then seeing things come to fruition. It was really interesting for you to put that perspective back on teaching and the feeling, and, really having that perspective visiting Colorado and making those decisions and actions happen. And that's what's so beautiful about real estate is there's endless amounts of opportunity when you surround yourself with great people. I want to take you back because you had that very quick decision to go to Keller Williams, and let's take you back to that decision there, because I really want to hear from your perspective, because so many people base decisions on where they go or who they align with or who they surround themselves with, because not everything's created equal. Obviously, right at that moment in your life and in your career, you said Keller Williams. You had reference based off of some colleagues that you trusted that were there. But what was it? Why KW? And then obviously you've been there since, so you have a lot more perspective. But I want to hear it from younger Russ back in that time.
Yeah. So I was at this conference. I was at a Mike Ferry Superstar Conference. I think that's what it's called. And I was looking around the room, and everyone had name tags. I remember Chris Heller, Keller Williams at the time. And, and I can't remember who else was in the room, but lots of big name agents, and they were all affiliated with national brokerages. And I'm Russ Nolting, Nolting Real Estate. And I remember saying to my coach, Debbie DeGroat, who's now with Place, coaching with Place. And I said, Debbie, like, why are these people giving away their money to brokers? Like, why don't they just all run a brokerage like me? And she said, because they're not dumb. And she probably said it nicer than that. No. But basically she said, because they're not dumb. She's like, they understand that a brokerage doesn't make sense for the owner until you get to about 70 agents. And I had that light bulb moment of, wow, okay. So I started doing just some informal research. My title company was in a Coldwell Banker office, so I knew kind of what that looked like. I had good friends over at Remax, and I would visit them, and I had a sense of what that felt like. So those are two extreme contrast from like everyone's in the office at the Caldwell Banker office and they feel like and look like employees. And frankly, in my world, they were super old and probably the age I am now. And I walked into the Remax and every door was shut.
Hmm.
And it was like the exact opposite from like the full bullpen to the ghost town with all the shut doors. I
Wow.
walked into the KW office and everyone was, Siri's talking to me. I walked into the KW office and everyone was excited, engaged, young.
Yeah.
And the model shocked me. You know, I figured I was going to be paying 50-50 on every deal. And they told me it was different.
Wow.
And I loved that.
Yeah.
It felt like a financial win. And it felt like a group of people that I could identify with. So I'm like 2010, I'm like 38 years old or something like that. And it just, I saw myself in that group.
Wow. That to me, massive perspective. And again, that's you being out there in the field, practicing what you preach and really coming to those conclusions. And I think everybody needs to put that in their own perspective when they're going down that line of decisions. There's always those forks in the road, but excellent explanation on that too, Russ. I want to dive into your position now as regional director.
Yeah.
What does it look like for the future? You know, what are the goals in your mind, you know, for everybody in your organization and that you're involved with? What does it look like now, and where do you want to see it go, Russ? What's that look?
Specifically in my world?
Yeah.
You know, my job is just like an agent's job. I mean, an agent gets into this business and their job is to help as many families as possible. And really it's to strategically and aggressively take market share.
Love it.
And you know, the neat thing about real estate is that's the realtor's job. And you own an office or you run an office. Well, your job is the same thing. It's like, how do we acquire as many agents who want to do that so that we collectively do the same thing, help as many families as we can and take market share. At the regional level, it's exactly the same thing. How can I, utilizing my 23 offices over 60 locations, have as many agents as possible to serve as many families as possible and continue to grow our market share. And I'll say this, if you don't think that you do a good job at it or a better job than the competition, then that becomes sort of empty and meaningless. And because I'm confident that we do it better than the vast majority of our competition, I can really get behind a aggressive and strategic effort to take market share. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it does. And again, Russ, when you're looking at it from the agent to consumer, from professional to professional, you do want to surround yourself with like-minded individuals and people that are growing and sharing and scaling. And I think that is it's infectious in the most positive of ways. And, you know, I have wonderful relationships with so many individuals across the world. And I'm a huge fan of Keller Williams. And so that's why but I just want to hear it from your perspective and your thoughts. Anybody who doesn't know, or maybe is thinking about it, you know, coming from you, it carries a lot of weight. And Russ, you have so much experience with your relationships and communication and understanding this way. And from a podcast host to a podcast host, yeah. I really do want to give you a big shout out into there. So, and I would love the Titan Nation to know about your podcast that you launched and just a little bit about it. So would you mind sharing a little bit?
Absolutely. So a few months back, I guess it was October, Gary Keller introduced a new purpose for KW. And I'm actually wearing a shirt about it. It's where entrepreneurs thrive. And, you know, everyone's got decals on the wall that share their mission or share who they are. And sometimes you look at that and you're like, yeah, whatever. I love where entrepreneurs thrive. I love the bright side of that, because in our industry, we love being entrepreneurs. There's a dark side to it also. Entrepreneurs are messy and confused, and they just do things, and that's how we feel, how I feel about this company. Like, I love everything positive about where entrepreneurs thrive, and I've made peace with all the challenging pieces of that. When Gary announced that, I thought, that's like the best description of who we are. When I got to KW, I thought I was going to sell houses for the rest of my life.
Wow.
And it just took a few months before I realized there are wealth building opportunities here. There are teaching and training opportunities here. There are coaching opportunities. There are leadership opportunities. There's ownership opportunities. And I've been able to take advantage of all of those things because we're a place where entrepreneurs thrive. So, so we decided to launch a podcast for Colorado, and for whoever wants to listen, where we each week, Fridays at 9:30 Mountain, we interview a different entrepreneur inside our ecosystem and how they are using the 4,000 KW Colorado agents to build businesses that are thriving. Last week, we interviewed Gay Ribble. She was our #1 GCI earner last year with $4.2 million in GCI. And her story of 30 years in real estate is a perfect example of the agent who starts at a different company, moves to KW in order to build a team, and through the last 30 years turns that into the #3 expansion spoke. She's an expansion team, but she's a spoke of an expansion team. She's the #3 expansion spoke in all of KW.
Wow.
And inside the Sarah Reynolds umbrella, Empower Home Team, she brought in $4.2 million. It's crazy.
I love that. Absolutely love it. And the fact that you're taking the time to do that, Russ, I have a big heart for you there. And the reason being is because it takes time and effort to really share freely with knowledge and information and just letting people know, regardless if they're affiliated or not. And I think that more of us should be doing that and providing that to the industry. There's just so much that we can take away. And so I applaud you for doing that. And I would encourage anybody who's tuning in and a Titan Nation fan to jump on and subscribe. What's the name of the podcast, Russ? And is there a URL, or is it, I'm assuming it's syndicated across all platforms?
It's syndicated across all platforms. It's called Where Entrepreneurs Thrive.
Love it.
And I'll get you the URL.
You're good. I will dig it up. I will make sure that it's in the show notes. Again, I encourage everybody to subscribe, tune in on Fridays at 9:30 Mountain Time, as Russ said. So, Russ, I do want to get to the second question, or the part 2 of this, which everybody who tunes in, they want to learn and grow and scale like the Titans, really taking your knowledge and your perspective and trying to apply it to their goals and to their life. So, Russ, if you could look back at your career thus far and pick or choose anything that you added or implemented that you really saw growth, scale, movement of the needle in a positive, what would that be? What does that look like? What advice would you give anybody tuning in or listening now or after the fact?
That's a big question. I see 2 things as probably the 2 keys for me.
Love it.
One, I've always had a coach. And like I shared with you, I even when I just jumped into this business, not having sold a single home, somebody said, get a coach. And the guy was working, he was a lender, a friend of mine, and I knew him outside of real estate, actually. He said, I coached with this guy named Brian Buffini. And I said, okay, great, whatever, I'll do it. And I invested, despite being in a recession and literally having no money. I invested in that coaching, and it was so instrumental. And through the years, I had a Buffini coach. I got to a certain level and looked around the room, and I thought, you're kind of at the top level in this room. Found a new coach, went to Mike Ferry. got to KW, switched to a MAPS coach, and then became a coach. I love the idea of coaching. And still today, had my coaching call this morning with my coach. I think it is absolutely instrumental to have somebody that holds you accountable, and helps you think. In fact, somebody today, I was coaching someone and they said, what do you love most about your MAPS coach? I coach with a guy named Brian Martin. He lives in Austin, Texas.
Okay.
And my response was, he's not a hard accountability guy. He's not a rah-rah guy. He thinks differently than I think.
Wow.
And that's what I like about him. In fact, when I was choosing coaches, I am a MAPS coach. He's a MAPS coach.
Mhm.
So we're colleagues as well.
Yeah.
And it's funny. And I told him this story when I hired him. I actually hired the person that was most irritating to me in MAPS. And I was like, and I said to him, I'm like, I'm hiring you because you kind of make me nuts. Like, you say things and I'm like, that's not right. And I hired him because I need somebody that thinks differently than I think in order to help me get to the next level.
Oh, Russ, what a beautiful example in your thought process there. And I'm a firm believer as well with coaches, trainers, mentors. You look at anybody doing anything at the highest levels. I don't care if it's business or if it's athletes, anything in between. Everyone at the highest level continually gets coached, continually gets trained. And some people think of that as backwards. Why would Tiger Woods need 4 coaches? One of the best of all time in the game.
Right.
Because they have perspective on what he doesn't. No matter how good we are, no matter how much we know, there's still holes, there's still gaps. And to have somebody who's been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, really steps ahead, or at least in alignment to understand where you are and where you're trying to go, is going to be massively impactful. And I think too many people downgrade the accountability and really the knowledge base of a coach or trainer or mentor. But I agree with you 100%, Russ. I think that's huge. I appreciate you saying that. It means a lot.
Yeah.
So what was the other thought process? You mentioned 2. So one was coach. What was the other thought?
So the other thought was around leverage.
Love it.
And hiring the right people. About 5 years ago, I decided to hire a virtual assistant. And today my business is run. We've got 5 virtual assistants that do everything. They're all in the Philippines. Mm-hmm. But one directly reports to me, one directly reports to my team leader in St. Louis. Mm-hmm. Two do some recruiting for us. One handles all of our financials. Hiring the right people, both virtual and then the boots on the ground, here, makes all the difference in the world. And that's been a huge journey. I mean, I've hired the wrong people over and over and over again. And I see a significant change in my life since we started learning from those mistakes and finding the right people.
Russ, I love the fact that you're mentioning those things as leverage and the ways to grow and to scale. And a lot of people have been mentioning virtual assistants. And I would love to get your take and perspective on this, because you mentioned physical, boots on the ground, versus the virtual. What's your best way, or if there is any, to qualify those individuals and to say, yeah, you know what, I think this is going to be the right fit for this position? And then what prompted that? When was it right in your mind to say, now is the time to bring that on? So I guess that's like a 2-part question.
I'm not sure I understand the question exactly, but let me tell you what I think you're saying.
Sure.
I think you're asking for. I spend much more time today with the person before I make the hire than I used to.
Perfect. Love it.
And, my first assistant was my best friend's wife.
Yep.
And that was just a massive disaster. She's probably not listening. Massive disaster. Awesome person. But hired for the wrong reasons, for the wrong role, for the wrong compensation.
Right.
Today, my process is, I probably spend 8 hours or so with a person before I hand them a contract.
Okay.
And we've gone through multiple days of interviews. I've asked the same questions over and over again to see consistency. I'm looking for personalities that I can work with, that I can enjoy spending time with. You know, the most important people in my world are these 4 kids, her husband, their child, who's my favorite granddaughter, and my wife.
Love
And I say this when I'm hiring people, like, this is who I care about most.
Yeah.
But my work family is number 2, because they're the ones I spend the most time with outside of these people.
Yeah.
So I got to like them. They got to be really talented, and they got to be really smart. And so I take a lot of time to make sure that they are.
Got it. Yeah. And so you answered that question. So you read my mind, Russ. That was perfect. Again, just evaluating that. And I know that there's so many people that are asking when and how, and really just putting that time in and understanding the people and asking the right questions. And there is that tonal, note of, can they accomplish what's needed for the right reasons? And then do you get along with them? Because you do spend time. There's a lot of trust. This is a relationship that's here. So I love that, the communication, understanding, the research. Huge advice, Russ. Is there anything else that comes to mind before we wrap this up? You've dropped so much information on everybody, Russ. This is incredible. Any takeaways, any thoughts before we close?
Well, so I'll say something on the virtual side too.
Yes,
so
please.
When I first got a virtual assistant through Cyberbacker in the Philippines, cyberbacker.com.
Okay.
I underestimated how valuable that could be. And the reason we have 5 people now that work for us is because the amount of output that you can get from a person who is working in their living room in the Philippines in the middle of the night is absolutely incredible if you do it right. It requires being patient with the training process, having a system to share how to do repetitive tasks.
Ooh, okay.
And it requires being not micromanagerial, because where I see people fail in hiring and in hiring virtual is they want it to be done the way they would do it. And when you can kind of get over the mental hump of done is better than perfect, you just get so much more accomplished. And we quickly scaled from 1 virtual person to 5.
Okay.
Because it affects profitability. It affects the amount of service you can offer. In my office in Chesterfield, Missouri, like, we are doing so much value add for our agents all through our people in the Philippines. And it's remarkable, because for a very generous towards the agent split and a very small cap, we're offering what brokerages used to charge 50% of the commission with no cap for, and we can do it at scale with 400 agents. It's incredible.
That's brilliant. And I appreciate you clarifying the physical and the digital hire, Russ. I mean, I think that's important. And a lot of people are looking into, virtual going through. And this is not a plug for Cyberbacker, but is that kind of, how did you find them? What's been the experience like that way, just in case if somebody's trying to follow your footsteps?
Cyberbacker is a company that was started by Craig Goodliff, who is a KW Maps coach.
Okay.
And he's using Keller Williams as the place where entrepreneurs thrive. He started with 1 person in the Philippines. Now I think he has 3,500 full-time, college educated talented virtual assistants,
Wow.
and they are trained on how to do real estate and specifically how to use the KW systems and tools. But my assistant, Nikki, has been with me for almost 5 years, and you know, completely handled through them.
Yep.
And it's a smooth process. I mean, you know, she does everything for me, from, you know, doing research reports to putting CMAs together to driving my database. She does my email. She does my calendar. She tells me who to call, you know, practically tells me what I'm supposed to wear tomorrow. So
I love it.
it's really helpful.
Oh, Russ, yeah, I can't thank you enough for diving deep into details and really just shedding so much light and so many different topics that really matter for growth and scale, and just really from your perspective at the highest level. So I can't thank you enough. I am going to give Cyberbacker a shout out. If Russ is using them, that's a big, you know, stamp of approval. I will definitely put them in the show notes if anybody's interested, you know, to learn more, that sort of thing as well. But Russ, I have to dub you an official real estate titan, my friend. That is a badge of honor that you can wear forever. There's no plaques, there's no trophies, but it's in your heart. That is yours, my friend. You have earned it 100%. So I can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
This is great. And everybody, thank you as always for your time and attention, your love and support. If you like here at Doing with Real Estate Titans, don't forget to like and subscribe. You do know what to do at this point. I appreciate you. I do want to give our sponsor a quick shout out, Lion Bolt Media. If you are in real estate and you're looking to grow and scale your business to the highest of levels with the leading edge digital marketing, visit lionboltmedia.com for more information. We are live here every Tuesday afternoon. A different Titan, a different location. We'll catch everybody on the next live episode of Real Estate Titans. Take care. Thanks, Russ.
Thanks.